The following pre-recorded program is sponsored by Adams Financial Concepts. Welcome to About Money, a different approach to investing you won't hear anywhere else. Your hosts, the AFC team, Mike and Al, are registered investment advisors who have a proven track record of managing long-term investments surpassing the markets. The information shared on the following program is for educational purposes only, and any investment advice given may not be suitable for all investors. And now, here's your AFC team, Mike and Al.
And it is Saturday, and we're going to be talking about Monday. Money. And we have a great program for you today. Remember Tower Records? You know, Bob Dylan sang that song, The Times They Are A-Changing. You know, it goes back to the early 1960s, but it's as true today as it was then, maybe even more true today. Remember Tower Records?
I do.
They had stores. I used to shop there. I used to get CDs and whatever. But as music became digital, you could download music. You didn't have to go to the record store anymore.
Now vinyl stores have popped up, right? You can go
Are
to
they?
little stores and you can find all the vinyl you want.
Yep. But between 2003 and 2007, 2,700 record stores went out of business. And not only could you download, but they cost 99 cents. Maybe it's less. I never download music, so I don't know. We used to have two daily newspapers in Seattle. Remember that? The Seattle Times and the Post-Intelligencer. The classifieds came along with Monster and then Craigslist. The classified for the newspaper went away, and suddenly we had one newspaper, and it seemed to get smaller and smaller every year for a long time. Subscriptions were down 30%, between 1990 and 2010. And we now have an online subscription. My children used to say to me, "Did you hear about this story?" I'd say, "No." And they'd say, "You'll read about it in the paper tomorrow." It's true. Now you get the news directly. The times they are changing. And that's true in the pharmaceutical industry too, in the pharmacy.
Yeah, I mean, their entire business model, extreme pressure. They're not making money like they used to. They popped up in the 80s and the 90s, right? They on every corner you'd find a CVS or a Walgreens or a Rite Aid. And now they're starting to disappear. They're starting to close stores under the pressure because they make most of their money off of the reimbursements for prescription drugs. Mm-hmm. All the paraphernalia they sell and all the things that they sell are ancillary to the drugs. But the problem is that it's something called what they call PMBs, prescription management business. And they are the ones, the intermediary between the drug companies and the pharmacy and the consumer. And they say that they're there to negotiate the prices to keep the costs down for the consumer. And the pharmacies are saying, well, CVS, and CVS ironically owns one of the bigger ones called Caremark. But there's a big divider between Caremark and CVS. They don't really know what goes on there, even though they own the company. But what they're complaining about is saying, hey, wait a second, you guys are snipping too much off, passing the savings along to the consumer, but taking the profits away from the pharmacists. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things that's going on. You know,
in 1980, there were, 18,000 chain pharmaceuticals. By 2010, that had grown to 22,000. In 1995, between 95 and 2015, the stock price of Walgreens had increased 14-fold. Well, that was the good times were rolling for them.
Yeah, I mean, Walgreens and CVS multiples around 14 times between the start of 1995 while the S&P only quadrupled. Walgreens' total revenues climbed from $42.2 billion in 2005 to $103.4 billion in 2015, while CVS revenues grew from $37 billion to $153 billion.
Almost 5 times.
Yeah. So if you held those stocks, you would have bested the S&P 500 by a few percent.
But as Bob Dylan said, the times they are a-changing.
Yeah, and so this pressure on these, and there's been a lot of confounding factors, such as recently COVID. So a lot of them have said they closed because of shoplifting. It's tough to verify that because they really can't, they don't release that, they haven't released that data, so they don't know how much is due to shoplifting. Though some of the ones that were, we see in Seattle in downtown those ones are in a tough area, but we see ones closing in nice areas that don't have a lot of crime and they're closing.
Yeah.
So there's something else going on.
At one time there used to be the idea that there had to be a pharmacy within 5 miles of every yep. person.
And there was.
Yeah.
But that's not. It used to be that there was CVS could brag that 85% of their their pharmacies was within 5 miles of 85% population. How can I say that?
Yeah, within 85% of the population.
Yeah, something like that. And so, but they can't make that claim anymore. They popped up in all the suburbs and stuff like that, but now they're starting to disappear because of pressure to close stores. But one of the big problems, Mike, is that they did this. It was a CVS pharmacy in Virginia, and they kept putting pressure on the pharmacy to cut costs, because they were losing money through the prescription. And the pharmacists were working like chickens with their head cut off. And if you remember, there was a time right after COVID, I think a lot of the pharmacies, they protested and left the job. Mm-hmm. And so there was this one pharmacist who finally said, the heck with it, and she quit her job, but she had to testify. The I don't know what they call it, but the people who regulate pharmacies, it's a state regulation. She went in front of the board and had to sit in front of the CVS attorneys and testify against them. But when the state came in and did an audit of their plans, they just picked 200 prescriptions randomly. They found a 37% mistake. Prescriptions to the wrong people, wrong dosage.
It happens, And I have prescriptions, and I get the wrong prescription. Go into the store and I get a medication that's under my name that was not for me.
Yeah.
And
there was a case of a guy who had brain bleed, and they ended up giving him a prescription for a blood thinner. Sent him to the hospital. He said he's got terrible headaches. His wife said he just all of a sudden with terrible headaches. Ended up in the hospital. Ended up with I don't think it killed him, but it caused him some severe problems. Giving him a blood thinner.
Well, we pick up our pharmacy things at one pharmacy, and all of them are put together in a central location and then shipped out to the pharmacy itself.
Here's the irony, Mike. As much as we love to shop online, we don't buy our prescriptions online. Only 9% of prescriptions are online, and that's not different. In 2010, it was only 7%. It's only grown 2%. So as much as we like to buy everything else online, we don't like to buy prescriptions online. People still like to go face to face, which I don't know why, but they do.
Well, part of it is when you have a prescription, you call it into, we pick ours up at a Safeway store.
Yeah.
You call it into Safeway, and they fill the prescription. If you have a prescription online, you have to get the doctor to call and submit online. And so it's almost out of habit, you think.
Yeah, but you think with AI, right, most people's prescriptions are lifelong things. Unless it's a short term, they could think of something where they could be automatically, like now Walgreens said to my prescriptions, we can just make it automatic where you don't even have to call. So every 3 months, my prescription's ready.
That would be nice to know that you get the same prescription every 3 months.
So, but I mean, the thing is that what's a lot of the thing that's killed these stores is that people don't shop like they used to, right? It used to be before people were shopping online. When you needed something, the CVS and Walgreens are open 24 hours. You could go get batteries or toothpaste or whatever you needed. People don't do that anymore. They don't have to go out at 12 o'clock at night to get them. Very rarely. They can get it all online and get it shipped. And that they still buy online, but they want to buy their prescriptions. And they want to pick up their prescriptions in person.
It just seems like you have to pick up a prescription.
I don't think so. I think I'm going to switch to mine and go, why am I going to the store to pick these things up? I'm going to start getting them online. It doesn't make any sense.
Did you get yours online? This is Allison. Allison's going to be talking later about
No, I'm with you, though. Why not?
I don't know. I just thought, why am I going to this? This is ridiculous. And I think the beneficiaries of this could be Costco, Walmart, and, Amazon.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know why. I never even thought about going online.
But I was shocked to see that the number of people doing it is so low, 9%. I mean, it's not like you got an engaging conversation with your Walgreens pharmacist. Maybe Allison does, but not me. I go in there, it's like, boom, next. Okay, I'm out of there. I don't even know the guy. He doesn't know my name. I don't know his name.
And they turn over so rapidly within the pharmacy.
Oh, yeah. And the pharmacy techs, they can't, as soon as they find something better, they're going to go on to another job.
Yeah.
So
it's interesting.
It's fascinating. I know. I just don't know how the business is going to sustain itself. I think most of it gone.
And so the other thing, when you think about pharmacies, is that the number of drugs that we run out of is over 200 currently.
That we run out of?
Yeah, you can't get those drugs.
Oh.
So we have a friend who's going through chemotherapy, mm-hmm. and she needed a blood thinner, mm-hmm. a particular blood thinner before her surgery. Mm-hmm. It wasn't available. I mean, that's something that is new, I think, as far as I know. is that we're beginning to run out of drugs at the pharmacy.
Well, that brings up another point, is that a lot of these drugs are coming off of their brand name and going generic.
Yeah.
And now they're so inexpensive, right? So instead of that $50 a month drug Allison might have had, now the pharmacy, the company can only charge $10 with the generic, because Pfizer or Glaxo, whoever makes the drug, it can be made generically, so it's a lot cheaper. No one's going to buy it from that company unless you have a problem with the generic.
Yeah. Interesting. The idea that we're trying to cover on the radio is to let you know what's going on in different industries. I mean, being invested in the drug industry, in the pharmacy industry, was awesome a while back. Not now. Don't go away. We've got more to come back to. We'll be right back with more.
About Money with Mike Adams on AM 1300 The Answer. For more information, click on adamsfinancialconcepts.com. About Money with your AFC team, Mike and Al, on AM 1300 The Answer. For more information, click on adamsfinancialconcepts.com.
So welcome back. We have a special guest today. She is back. She was with us in 2016, eight years ago. And I have to apologize because back then I called her company Manufacturing in a Box. Manufacturing in a Box. Actually, the name of the company is Out of the Box Manufacturing. I got most of the words right, just in the wrong order. Anyway, our guest is Allison Budvarson. Welcome to the program, Allison.
Thank you so much for having me.
So why don't we start with your background?
So I actually am a homegrown manufacturing enthusiast. My very first full-time, I would say, big girl jobs in air quotes was in a manufacturing environment. So I've been doing it since I was 20 years old, and I really love it. I've been able to spend time on the shop floor, spend time in the sales department, marketing, and now helping my husband. He and I operate Out of the Box Manufacturing together. So really come full circle.
So when you were on the shop floor, tell me what you were doing back then.
So I started actually in my first manufacturing job in the inside sales office in a customer service position. I tended to spend a lot of time on the manufacturing floor talking to the direct labor folks, the people that actually built the product. I was just very curious about the process and about the people in general. So one day the owner of that organization came to me and she said, you know what, we have a production supervisor position that's open, and you seem to really do well with the shop floor employees, so I think that you ought to try that job. So I did, and it was so much fun.
Yeah, it is. I started in manufacturing a long time ago as well. So talk to us about Out of the Box Manufacturing.
Out of the Box Manufacturing is a contract manufacturer of electronic components. So we build the printed circuit board assemblies for an OEM, an original equipment manufacturer's device. So we are essentially building the electronic components that make that device operate. We may also participate in assembling the support functions of that electronic device, things like cable assemblies, box builds, it goes into a plastic or metal housing, etc.
So we've talked before about the CHIPS Act. I'm sure that's having an impact on your business. Talk about that.
Yes, absolutely. So I was really excited actually when the whole conversation about the CHIPS Act first started, because being in electronics manufacturing for many years, I've seen different stages of the supply chain, right? So component availability or lack thereof is not necessarily a new thing to PCBA or printed circuit board assembly. However, it really got bad during COVID. And the reason for that is because consumer habits changed, right? Suddenly everyone is at home and they want a new laptop and a new phone and a new gaming device. So the market shifted, and all of a sudden very high-end component parts were required for those consumer electronic devices. And the supply chain just wasn't there yet to satisfy that need. So it put us in a steep place of having to come back, build our way back from that issue. And I think that really brought the problem to the forefront of people's minds. If you have to wait 6 weeks for a new phone or a laptop, people didn't really like that.
No.
Especially when there wasn't much else to do during COVID. So the CHIPS Act was born, right? And, there was a lot of good in there. Now that the act has passed and we see what actually resulted from the act, we see that the U.S. has placed a lot of importance on the chip itself, right? The brains of the circuit board, the processor does the hard work. But the reality is that it's one component of a very complex assembly. So in the fabrication, the PCB fabrication industry, there's actually a push for a similar bill to support PCB fabrication. And they use the term chips don't float. Right, these chips have to be installed on something, and they have to be put together in a device in order to work. So I suppose my view on the CHIPS Act is that it did some good, but there's still quite a ways to go in really reshoring and building the electronics industry and the electronics supply chain back to where it was probably 20 years.
So what's going on that way? Are you seeing new companies start? Are you seeing companies expand? Are you guys expanding in that area?
Yeah. So actually, I just heard from a organization down in Oregon that is trying to participate in producing components. So there is definitely activity that's spurred by for capital and that sort of thing. So it's definitely having an effect. Of course, slower than maybe some of us see.
So is part of the R&D question involved with that?
Yes, I'm really glad that you did that. So out-of-the-box manufacturing, our business model is to do approximately half of our revenue in small to medium volume assembly services, and the other half of our revenue in quick turns and prototypes. So we can build a circuit board assembly in as little as 24 hours, right? Generally, that is supporting rapid prototype R&D cycle. So the availability of components and really that R&D tax credit really spur. We actually live in really special place. The western part of Washington, huge. So for large organizations to no longer have the tax incentive to invest heavily in R&D, and then small to mid-sized organizations like mine, to not have the reimbursement for those efforts as well through the R&D tax credit role.
So we've had tax credits on and off since World War II. And actually, World War II was where we really got the stimulus for doing things like nuclear or whatever. So what's gone on recently that we don't have the tax credits and the R&D support? When did all that change?
So I can't say exactly when, but I know that the federal R&D tax credit actually expired and it was not renewed.
Okay.
So we're kind of in this limbo period where we're waiting for the federal government to hopefully reinstate that benefit so that we can see a little bit more incentive in the future.
And so where do you see that going? I read an article this morning that said one of the senators wanted to block the whole thing.
I think that there's probably a lot of us that are a little bit cynical about what can get done with politics these days. I will continue to cross my fingers and toes that with the next cycle, there is some movement on that issue.
I think what we started talking about today, it's not just the R&D tax credit, it's the child tax credit and the pharmaceutical benefit managers. Pharmaceutical...
the PMBs.
PMB, pharmacy manager. Anyway, yes. I think all of those are rolled into one bill. I could be wrong, but I think that's all going on.
So the R&D tax credit, then, did that have effects for pharmaceutical companies too, then, right? Because they do most of their money is R&D.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would imagine so.
So, I mean, it's far-reaching. It doesn't help us at all, but I mean...
We could start an R&D section, couldn't we?
Yeah.
Well, and I think the reason why R&D is so important to manufacturing stateside is because we are not, especially companies like Out of the Box, right? We're really not interested in chasing the high volume PCBA assembly that is probably going to be built, very cheaply for well-established products in Mexico, India, China, right? Where organizations like Out of the Box and businesses like ours can be successful is in working on the highly technical, need it fast, need to stay close to the product development firm. That's how we make money. So incentivizing that in the U.S. I think is really important to prop up the industry.
So who are your customers? They're local around you?
Yeah, most of our customers are local. So we work with, there's a huge product development community, I would say, here in Western Washington. So we work very closely with a lot of product development firms so we can build their small batch first iterations for the customers that they're working with. Interestingly, we often don't know what we're building or who we are building for.
Oh, interesting.
So there's a lot of privacy and confidentiality in place.
Yeah.
But when we can talk in general terms about industry, so we support defense, aerospace, consumer electronics.
Yep.
We have supported the medical device industry in the past, but a lot of just general commercial industry as well. Things that you wouldn't normally think of, but like automatic gate entry systems, flow valve systems, all of those things have, and even appliances. Just about everything has a smart device in it.
Yeah,
now.
yeah, right.
I mean, the consumption of energy has gone down, way down, because everything has a car. It's the Internet of Things, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Job security for me.
So in all that's going on, you mentioned that the Western Washington is a major hub for manufacturing.
Yes.
That's a really surprising kind of thing in a lot of ways. We knew we had a Boeing here at one time. We still manufacture a few airplanes here. But to see all the small firms that are growing.
Yeah, and I think we can probably thank Boeing for giving us the nudge in that direction so many years ago. But the supply chain is so robust for contract manufacturing in Western Washington, and even just supporting all of the innovation. You think about all of the incredible companies that have come out of, Starbucks and Media, Amazon, and, the space companies. There's just so much going on here. There's a plethora of opportunity and innovation.
That's a really important part of what we do. And manufacturing is an important part of where we are and what we do. And I think there's been this idea that manufacturing moved overseas and that we don't manufacture anything anymore. But I think what you're saying and what we observed is we have a vital manufacturing base.
We absolutely do. It's still here. We make a conscious effort at Out of the Box to talk about manufacturing to the youth, and we bring students in for tours all the time. And if I had $1 for every time somebody said, "I can't believe that was manufactured here," I'd be a rich lady.
We'll be right back, coming back with Allison right after this commercial break. Don't go away. Don't you find this interesting? We'll be right back.
About Money continues. Remember the website, adamsfinancialconcepts.com. Here's your AFC team, Mike and Al.
So we're here with Allison Budvarson of Out of the Box Manufacturing. I got it right this time.
Thank you.
So let's talk about manufacturing in general. This whole concept that all the manufacturers moved overseas and we don't manufacture anything here. What we're hearing is a completely different story. We're hearing about a very vital manufacturing in Western Washington. But how about the rest of the U.S.?
Yeah. Well, I would say that there's probably way more manufacturing done in the U.S. than people even just, an organization like mine, we have 30 competitors along the West, so there's a lot going on. I would say maybe manufacturing is different, but hasn't gone away.
So in the past, it's been a number of years, a lot of years. We had people like Synopsys and some of the design firms. How do you function with them?
It's a partnership.
Okay.
It's a partnership. So a lot of times they will come to us and here, these are our required documents, CAD, et cetera, and we can provide what we call DFM, or design for manufacturability advice. Say, move this connector, et cetera. It'll make it more easier to manufacture, thus cheaper for you as well.
So one of the people that was on the program was a guy by the name of Scott Bright. Do you know Scott? He wasn't with Synopsys. I'm trying to remember the name of the company. But one thing we talked about is they designed the electric toothbrush.
Ah, yeah.
And it was huge when they designed it. And it was a matter of getting it small enough. So if I were Scott Bright and coming to you and saying, okay, we've got this concept, this electric toothbrush we've designed. It's like 2 or 3 feet tall. How do we shrink it down and get it to the right size? Is that the kind of thing that you do?
We can certainly partner with an organization to help them through that. Yeah, it's not uncommon for new products to go through double-digit alphanumeric revisions before they actually arrive at a final product that they're going to production.
So like the electric toothbrush was not 3 feet tall.
Right.
But the original was. I remember that. I remember seeing some of the other products that they designed, and it begins with a large product, and part of the deal is to shrink it down.
Oh, Mike, you remember the first cell phone, right?
Oh yeah,
It was like carrying out a brick, yeah. But back to your manufacturing in the United States, so I think a lot of people, when they think about manufacturing and it leaving, we're thinking about the auto, the Rust Belt, like Nippon Steel's trying to buy out the last steel company in America. American Steel, is it America?
U.S. Steel.
U.S. Steel, thank you, America. So I think that's where the drain, that area is where the drain has been. And I think that's kind of iconic of what people think of when they think of manufacturing.
And the steel industry is a very interesting one because, I got my MBA at Carnegie Mellon in 1967. And I can remember in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, all the steel mills. You had Bethlehem, you had Allegheny Steel, you had U.S. Steel, you had J&L Steel. And I can remember one of the places I used to like to take a date is to go up on Mount Washington and look down, and you had the blast furnaces. It was an incredible thing to see. Beautiful, gorgeous. It resulted in the snow being gray. But other than that, I mean, all that disappeared. But it was old technology.
Right.
And it was the new mini mills that came after World War II. A lot of the steel industry overseas was destroyed. And instead of building the big blast furnaces and the big coal-fired furnaces to melt the iron ore and make steel, they made the small mini mills. And the U.S. companies didn't keep up with it.
No, but I mean, I remember in the 80s where I grew up 5 miles south of Boston, there was a big General Dynamics plant used to make ships for World War II. And when that went out, that was the biggest. And that went out because, and it goes to another point, Mike, is the show we did a while back on Flying Blind with Boeing.
Yeah.
Great book if you haven't read it. But the manufacturer of Boeing, because it used to be Boeing would try to manufacture as many things like you're saying, Allison, close to home. Like, we have control. We can go call Allison and say, hey, let's get the specifications on that part. You and I can sit down at the table and go over the specifications, right? But they started to make things cheaper and cheaper when they merged with McDonnell Douglas, was to outsource everything all over the world and bring all the parts in some place wherever was cheapest to make it. And they're realizing after a while that problems they had with the 737 MAX that, wait a second, maybe we need to more control over our production lines and things like that. And you see this innovation, if you haven't read it yet, but I'm a little more than halfway through Elon Musk's book. And whether you like him or not, the guy's brilliant at what he's done and the way he's built 2 companies. And the way he built the companies is fascinating because it's not about the product. The product, the little widget is the car, the rocket is secondary. It's the process of what he does to take it from point A to point B and get it done. For one example, like they're building one of the rockets and he has to get these clips, something, I don't know what, clip something. He said, we'll call one of the the rocket manufacturer, the government. You got to go through this government book. $1,500 for one clip. He's like, what? $1,500? Find it cheaper. They go to Home Depot and find it for $30. Does the same thing. Right? I mean, it just asinine ways of production and making things so like one engineer came from Boeing. He said they had no innovation. They wouldn't listen to any of his ideas. He said every idea he had to make things faster and cheaper, make it better. No, we can't do that. We can't do that. Went to SpaceX and Elon hired him on the spot because he interviewed every single engineer, saw the guy's persistence and ability to just cut through all the garbage and get things done. It's fascinating to see.
It's innovative. You're seeing that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Creativity is probably the most underutilized soft skill in manufacturing. When I interview high school students or I talk to career and technical educators about what, a student should be doing or thinking about or soft skills that they should be working on, I always mention creativity.
Yeah, like when he started his Tesla plant, they started out with complete automation and then realized that, wait, a human can do this job faster. They started tearing out all the machines because they realized they couldn't get it to do it fast enough. And so there's some ideas that everything's going to be automated. Well, you and I talk about this a lot. Yeah, to a point. Till the human can't do it faster. Yes, but it's just it's the fascinating process that he went through of not just building the car and building the electric car. I think that to him is second. The process of getting it done efficiently and getting rid of all and thinking outside the box, it done as efficiently as possible and as inexpensive as possible.
You see that.
Yeah, so much of what we do is about process. We always, when something goes wrong in the factory, we always say blame the process, not the person, because it really is about it. Oftentimes, it doesn't really matter what you're building as long as you have the right formula and the method.
Yeah.
So how do you get to that?
A lot of trial and error. We have a very robust continuous improvement program, and a lot of manufacturers do. A lot of trial and error. Something didn't work. That's not the end of the world. What's important is that you learn from that, you improve and you make sure that you're not going to make that mistake again. So a constant innovation cycle, especially in what we do, when half of what we build, we're probably never going to see again, right? It's really difficult to get to the most efficient manufacturing process possible when you're building something for that individual product. So it's really about the global processes in the business and how they operate efficiently to make sure that you're getting to where Elon Musk is trying to go.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned building something for a one-time use. Is that, do you have that? Do you have people building a one-time use thing?
Yeah, so mainly it's for an R&D environment, right? When we're building those quick turners and prototypes, we are building a very small batch, 5 to 25 units. And those are the first iteration, whatever widget this engineer or this organist is building.
Right.
So we're going to deliver that small batch of units to them. They're going to do what they need, test it, etc. We may see the product again, but it's going to be what we call in the industry revved, right? So and many times a product will be revved over and over and over.
You know, it reminds me of a story. I get off on tangents. But during World War II, for the big guns, the very big guns, they had a room full of people that sat and calculated. They'd take in the wind velocity and the wind direction and the weather and the distance and all that. And they would sit there and calculate how to aim those guns. And somebody went to a guy and asked him to build a machine to do that. And the story goes that he testified to Congress. It was an expensive machine, but he testified that he thought they would probably build 5 of these machines and that would be the end of it. Now, the name of the people in that room, they had a job title, and the job title was computer. And the company was IBM.
I thought that might have been where you were going. Incredible.
5 machines, right?
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, do you see that happening in some of your products?
Yes.
Where they build them?
Yes. So we can go from, Rev A, is usually the first iteration of a product. We may see Rev ZX. So it's common. It's
fascinating to hear. You hear the story about us, but probably not a lot about you do. But you're probably as important or more important what they did. We're coming to a commercial break. Don't go away. If you missed this program, you can find it on About Money, actually on YouTube at About Money. You can also find it on our podcast on our website. And you should check this out. This is important to understand. You hear a lot about manufacturing is offshore and we're trying to onshore it. But here we have vital industry. And we want you, the listener, to understand whether it's pharmacies, whether it's manufacturing, we want you to be ahead of the curve and not behind the curve, to know what's coming, not what's been. Don't go away. We want to finish the program with a little talk about Adam's financial concepts.
About Money with the AFC team, Mike and Al on AM 1300, The Answer. For more information, click on adamsfinancialconcepts.com.
So as we finish up, I want to talk a little bit about Adam's financial concepts. I want you to think about the website. If you check the website, you'll find that we post our returns. We post our client returns. We take the composite of all our stock client accounts. We put that into a composite. We just take every quarter, we take how well all those clients did, net of all fees, net of all costs, net of all expenses, what actually appears in the client accounts. We consolidate that. We make a composite, an average of every account. We do it so that it's an average of every single account. And that makes a difference because there's some people that measure based on how much the accounts are. Oh, a $10 million account counts a lot more than a $100,000 account. For us, a $5,000 account, and we have a few children's accounts that are $5,000. A $5,000 account counts just as much as a $10 million account in terms of what we manage. All that's put into a composite, and then we compare ourselves to the Standard & Poor's with dividends reinvested. And something really strange happened at the end of 2023, because in 2023, we missed in terms of beating the S&P 500 on since inception, the 10-year, the 7-year, the 5-year, the 3-year, the 2-year, and the 1-year. It's the first time that's ever happened that we missed every one of those. And when you think about that, That's kind of like missing everything. The thing is, we're not comparing ourselves to the average financial advisor. There was a study that was done by Jackson National Life that went out and asked financial advisors, how do you think you beat the Standard & Poor's 500? 75% said yes, we beat the Standard & Poor's 500. Now, this was back in 2012 this was done. Cerulli and Associates went out and did a survey of a large number of financial advisors, and they found those financial advisors during that period of time not only didn't outperform the S&P 500, but over the 2010-2011 time period, they got a total return of 4.3%. That's an average of a little over 2% per year. The Standard & Poor's was up 17%. Adams Financial Concepts, our clients were up 29%. You know, when you don't put out the numbers, you can imagine anything you want to imagine. But we've looked at how the average financial advisor does. We looked at that study. There was a study done over 2015, 16, 17, and 18 by SEI, Securities and Exchange, whatever it's called, institution. We looked at Think Advisor does a survey of the largest financial advisors. And fairly consistently during that time, the returns have been approximately 5% in the best years. And actually in 2023, they had a very good year because they were up almost 10%. But in 2022, they were down 10%, actually over 10%. So their total return, if you look at it, is just under 4% during the time that we measure since the bottom in 2000. The Standard & Poor's is up 15%, and we were up 14.7. And if you listen to the program very often, you know that I'm a big baseball fan. I've had season tickets to the Mariners, suffered through them for 38 years. That's a real pain. I like baseball. But the average score in a baseball, for baseball teams, the average is 81 wins and 81 losses, because every time you have a win, you have a loss. So the average is 81. And nobody compares themselves to the average. They don't say, oh, we're better than average. If you look at that time period for the Mariners, since the last time we were in the playoffs, before this current team, the last time we were in the playoffs in 2002, the average number of wins and losses, the average number of wins was 49%. Do you think the fans are really happy with 49%? That's almost average, so close to average, only 1% off average. Now, the players don't want to be average. The fans don't want to be average. The focus is on the World Series and the playoff. That's where we are. We don't want to compare ourselves to the average. We want to compare ourselves to the Standard & Poor's 500 with dividends reinvested, because that's the most difficult thing you can do. There's only 1% of professional money managers that are able to beat the Standard & Poor's 500 over a 10-year time period. This 2023 is the first time we dropped below that. And my guess is we'll be above it within a year or two. We have big swings. I guess the higher the return, the higher the amplitude of those swings. But we're at 14.7 versus the average financial advisor at under 4. We're not trying to be average. We're not trying to compare ourselves to average. We want to be the best. We want to go to the World Series. I hope the Mariners the World Series. Every spring I go through this same thing.
But Mike, I think you got to address a wider. Most people get overly concerned about volatility.
Yep.
I can't remember who I read. Barron, really successful money manager. Volatility is volatility. It is what it is. There's nothing you can do to manage volatility. You're either going to take lower returns or you're not.
Yep.
And so if you're willing to settle for less than the S&P 500, then don't complain when the S&P 500 does 18% and your account does 3%.
Yep. If
you don't want to deal with the volatility, don't play the game.
And there are some people that need to be there. There's some people that cannot deal with...
Oh, no, absolutely. I agree on that. But for the most people, having a little more volatility in their plan is not necessarily a bad thing.
I agree. Especially in these times, we've been saying since 2016, we face a long bout of inflation. And we don't think that the Fed is done. We think that inflation is going to be around.
And here's the other thing that's missed out of the calculus when other advisors talk about, if you go deal with these other, you're going to deal with, if you're putting your money in the S&P 500, you have to deal with a lot of volatility, is that since 1950, downturns have been shortened. They used to be 22 months long. The average downturn, Mike, today only lasts 11 months, and they're getting shorter. Is that because of algorithm trading? It could be. They don't really know. But the average downturn is so short. Just look at COVID. The market dropped precipitously and then bounced right back up. Look at 2008. The people you and I have talked to prospects who have cashed out in 2008, right? If they just stayed in a couple of years later, they would not only had their money back, but then the market went on to tenfold increase from that period on. They lost all that gain. And now we're in inflation where they could really use that money.
I can remember I started as a stockbroker, and the Dow was at 1,700, 36,000 was at 1,700. And in cold calling, I remember talking to a guy who waited. He said he was waiting for the Dow to reach 1,300. It never got there. I never called him back, so I don't know if he's still waiting for 1,300.
Oh, I've talked to several people like that, Mike. Oh, I'm waiting for a downturn. I'm waiting for a real drop in the market. Okay, how long are you going to wait for? I'm just going to wait and see for the downturn. Okay, there hasn't been a downturn. There's been no, with the Fed call before we saw inflation 2021, we're going to have transitory inflation. Inflation was not transit.
Yeah.
We're going to have a recession. We're going to have a soft landing. We're going to have a hard landing, a soft landing, a hard landing. Neither. We've seen nothing. Zero. We've skated right through it.
We said that, too.
Yeah, we called that. Years ago we called that. We've been saying inflation. We've been saying that we're not going to see a recession because of the unemployment figures. Because when you have 4 million jobs that need to be filled, how can you have a recession?
Yeah. Anyway, that wraps us up for this week. Have a very good weekend. If it's Saturday, we will be talking about money. Join us next Saturday. And until then, have a great week. Enjoy yourselves. And do something fun.
You've been listening to About Money with registered investment advisors Mike Adams and Al Souza. If you'd like more information about what you've heard today or about AFC's investment philosophy and strategy, or if you'd like the AFC team to evaluate your own portfolio, click on adamsfinancialconcepts.com. That's adamsfinancialconcepts.com. The information shared in the preceding program was for educational purposes only, and any investment advice given may not be suitable for all investors. Join us again next Saturday at noon for more About Money with Mike Adams here on AM 1300, The Answer. The preceding program was sponsored by Adams Financial Concepts.